Alrighty, how's everybody doing today? All right, today I'm talking about building your internal tooling from the console up. So I want to start with an initial question, and that is, how old is your code base? And just by show of hands, not that I'm going to be able to see all of you all that well just because of the lights coming in here, but how many have apps that are essentially Rails and Net? Less than 6 months old. A few more. 6 months to 18 months? Okay. 18 months to 3 years? All right. And more than 3 years old. So, okay, the vast majority of you are here. All right. So I'm going to set up some central questions here that I want you to kind of keep in mind throughout the course of the talk here. When is a good time for a team to start making their internal life better? And this is essentially when you start building an application, you're really starting to solve an external need, generally speaking. But when do you actually start paying attention more to what your internal needs are? What might that look like? And who should advocate for it, and who should do it? So about myself, I am a senior developer, team lead-ish of an education-focused ebook store. And my team builds the store on a Rails code base. We aren't using anything other than Rails. We're not using Active Merchant, well, we're using Active Merchant in a few areas and stuff like that, but we're not. We basically built a custom app for this. I am one of 3 production key holders, and I review a lot of code. So our store looks like this. Internally, we call it Stargate. On the administrative side, we have a rudimentary interface. We have some nice graphics and stuff like that. And we have a few things that we actually take care of in terms of administrative tasks. One of them is looking at what we call catalog imports, but this is essentially our inventory ingestion process. And just a little bit of a zoom in. I checked all this out earlier, and I noticed that my full frame screenshots were very, very tiny from the very back of the room, so I tried my best for the back of the room folks to embiggen these. But you'll see here that we've got like what type of inventory import we're doing. These next 2 columns don't get used a whole lot. How long things happened, what it was started by, and whether or not it was successful. And you see about halfway down, there's something called in progress, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the application itself, we're currently on Rails 5.1 and Ruby 2.5. It is React for the front end. There's a fair amount of ERB in there feeding React as well. We use MySQL and Redis for data stores, Sidekick for background job processing, and Kubernetes on Google Cloud is how we deploy. This is pretty much an app that is right at the sweet spot of Rails here. We're not doing terribly hard computer science. We're not, inventing new algorithms for this sort of thing. We're running an online store. So I spent a lot of my time helping my team, and that really reflects as I spend a lot of time helping them find the answers to questions that they can't find on their own. And it's not because they're not smart people. I work with some very, very smart people. It's because they don't have access to go find the answers themselves. And so accordingly, I am a bottleneck of knowledge and access. Now, if anybody has read the Phoenix Project, I'm Brent. All right. Now, what defines Brent in the Phoenix Project? Brent is a focal point of multi-team dependencies. He can't focus because he either seeks out or he gets pulled into every emergency or emergent situation that comes up. And he spends all of his time being a firefighter instead of being a mentor. Now, my situation is not nearly as bad as the one that is conveyed in the book about Brent. it's not catastrophic or anything, but it has at times been incredibly frustrating feeling the weight of expectations and demands on time to not feel like I can basically bring full value other than being in a firefighter role. So I want to make this dynamic better. I don't want to be Brent. I don't want anybody else on my team to be Brent. And so we're going to talk about how to mitigate this sort of team bottlenecking. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about some overarching goals for this. We're going to kind of build up the state of the world for how my application is presently. And I'm hoping that you all can find something to kind of relate to for where your apps are all at. We're going to talk about some initial pain points with all of this. We're going to talk about the approaches to problem solving with this. And we're going to then go through kind of stepping up from the Rails command line and the Rails console. And then we're going to go into some initial automation and notifications. We'll take that opportunity to reevaluate our pain points. We'll look at some administrative frameworks, and then we'll talk about building your own tooling. So, goals. We want to make the problems easy to see, evaluate, and act upon for the entire team. So we don't want to limit who can actually see that there is a problem in existence, and we don't want to have anybody have to ask a production key holder to discover if a problem exists. We want to limit key holder-specific tools to being rarely needed and well-defined, and basically for higher risk situations. We want to develop, observe, evaluate, and iterate on this. And so we want to take this initiative. We want to take this approach, and then we want to build on it over time. So some further goals here: less involvement for myself and the other production key holders in emergent situations. And so when I say emergent situation, what do I mean? I mean something that has some sort of business urgency to it, but isn't necessarily an emergency, just something that comes up as unplanned work. So a lot of it can boil down to a publisher that we're doing business with doesn't have an answer to why a particular title isn't in the store. Somebody has to go find an answer to that. That is an emergent situation. Emergency would be the store is down. We want to facilitate having fewer emergent situations overall. So we want to provide proactive tools for folks to basically be able to discover problems and address them quickly or find the answers to questions that they have. And then I want to take the time that I'm currently putting into these emergent situations, and I want to redirect that into actually longer-term mentorship, helping my team improve the tools that they work with to better answer their questions and better operate the site better, and then just like focus on things like technical career growth. Finally, I don't want to change Brent's name. I don't want to be Brent, but I don't want anybody else on my team to be Brent either. So some caveats with this. This is all work in progress, and I'm okay exploring the ideas that will make our collective life better and the experiences better, and then this is all iterative. I don't want this to be a final state in any any sense of the word. So, into world building. So the code base here is about 4 years old. It was started with a consulting company, and over time, we've both grown the team, scaled down the consultancy involvement, and the team has turned over. And all the development efforts primarily have been around implementing sales-focused features and solving external problems, not so much on addressing our internal life. Production access is limited. We have some notification for automated jobs, but not all of them. And then production access is actually required to determine the state of automated jobs and generated artifacts. So our feeds that go out to search indexes and stuff like that, we have some notifications around that, but we don't have a lot. Problem solving presently involves a lot of ad hoc Rails console or database digging. And again, we have a constraint that we only have 3 key holders. And the vast majority of these operational questions end up requiring this specialized access. So let's talk some more about pain points. We need to reset stale data we need to investigate error states of transactions, so people attempting to make purchases on the site and for whatever reason they can't, whether their address doesn't validate or their credit card doesn't work, or we can't generate the proper entitlement once they try and make a purchase. We have to troubleshoot and restart failed jobs, like the inventory ingestion. And then we have to find and verify artifacts. So like our sitemaps or our store feeds to external sites, we actually have to make sure that those successfully built and they look the way that we think they should. Context switching is painful. So for myself, I find that disruption from these emergent situations, an ad hoc request, is a bit of a productivity pit. And so this manifests that I spend a lot of my time context switching or answering questions instead of doing the feature work or the proactive technical debt paydown or team mentorship and improvement that I would prefer to do. So we talked a little bit about we'll have ingestion failures, we will have notification to third-party sites fail, publishers asking why a title isn't in inventory, or we might have to troubleshoot payment transaction problems. And another one that's pretty popular for us is email notification troubleshooting. Why didn't a particular user get an email like, say, a password reset? We also run into DDoS issues. We can get overly aggressive site crawling from search indexes, which looks a lot like a DDoS. We deal with fraudulent purchases. And just all the other general issues that can come up with running an e-commerce store. Some of these are one-offs, some of them are ongoing and cyclical. So our sales cycle is strong in the fall and the spring, tied to the college semesters, a little calmer outside of that. So let's start talking about how to make this better. Let's start by approaching the issues iteratively. So what defines the issue? This could be just a simple restatement of the problem. Who has the issue, or who has to address the issue now? And by this I mean, who are the limited population of your team members who can actually address the issue or question? And what makes that true? And who could potentially address this issue instead? So if the prior constraint was removed, if things were different, who would be able to potentially act and answer that issue in a future instance of that problem? How might solving this issue be easier? And that's meaning prevention, easier mitigation, higher visibility, that sort of thing. And how might this issue be easier to spot? So that brings us into issue visibility. And this is, we'll talk about shadow alerts and notifications. You can obviously do monitoring with New Relic or Skylight, or you have operational dashboards. And these are good across a wealth of problems, from payment problems, fraud, inventory operations, other periodic jobs that you all will run. We also want to improve resilience. We want to make expensive things more fault tolerant. So for us, our sitemap extraction process is very, very expensive. It takes multiple hours to basically take the contents of our inventory and write it out to a series of XML files. This isn't a resilience engineering talk, but we want to consider what we make bulletproof, and then for less expensive things, making them easier to recover from failure. And we want to make it as practical as possible to recover from failed jobs. So we want to have a well-defined path for how we have to rerun something if we have to rerun it. And the other thing I'll add here is you might have a general approach for how you want to approach these sort of problems, but I encourage you to think pragmatically about how you solve each one individually, and kind of let the actual individual circumstances kind of dictate how you approach that from a set of general principles that you have. You want to involve your team here. So you want to socialize the issues, you want to review and iterate solutions with them, and you don't want to be the only person working on solving these problems. So if the problem, one of the key problems that we're facing here is a bottlenecking, don't perpetuate the bottleneck by being the only person working the problem. So for my team, what we have is a point developer, and this is a rotating responsibility, presently every couple of weeks. And this is a person who acts as technical triage as needed for bugs. They will be the kind of general technical question answerer, and they become a focus point of interruption for our business stakeholders, our product manager, business analyst, some of the other business folks elsewhere as well. And what we want to get them to is being able to iteratively improve internal tooling so that they can be more effective. Right now, we're kind of on our second or third iteration of what our point developer does, and what we have is kind of a DevOps, a daily ops spreadsheet. Now, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, but what we have is a series of things that we break down. In the last 24 hours, have we seen any spikes in New Relic on the back end or on the front end? Do we have any new honey badger issues that we need to look at across our different environments? Is catalog or our inventory ingestion working correctly? Is background job processing working as we expect it to? All right. So now let's actually start talking about how to start making improvements here. So we have kind of this initial state with the command line in the Rails console. And what's the console good for? So you can investigate your data and your state changes. You can trial and apply one-off fixes because, hey, REPL. You can work with your production data, and you can actually write new classes and methods against that to test out solutions to things. And it's also a kind of handy backwards way of running SQL queries. So yes, if you don't actually have live access to a database console, you can actually execute that SQL from the Rails console itself. And actually, this is kind of nice because you can then kind of intermix testing out Rails objects or working with SQL queries and seeing what you get. So we use this, and we look at things like error states on pending transactions or failed purchases. We look at whether or not why a particular book is not in inventory or not showing up in the store, or why our inventory ingestion process isn't working correctly. And we also use it for flipping feature flags. We'll have to make data corrections as well, as requested by our business partners. And as a sample use case, this is actually something that I'll touch on a little bit further, but we're actually planning out this work in Slack. So we have a couple of actual commands that we're going to be issuing here in the kind of the pre-formatted block there. So we're calling out the work. We're going to explain what's going on, and we're going to get a couple sign-offs. So if you notice down at the very bottom there, you've got a couple of check marks. That's me and my manager basically saying, yes, thumbs up, we're going to go ahead and do this work. So the benefits of the console here, it's ad hoc. You have access to your scopes and your prod data. You can reopen classes and write new methods on a trial basis. And you probably already have access to it on your production servers, be it on Kubernetes or Heroku, a VM, or physical servers, however you're logging in, or basically whatever you're deploying to, I should say. Caveats. Of course, you're limited here to your production key holders. So you're not actually changing the dynamic of that bottleneck at this point here. Secondly, you're live in production. So you're working potentially without a safety net. Your ad hoc solutions aren't saved here. So you do all that hard work to fix a problem, and you don't have an artifact really that you have, or a natural artifact to take away from that. And it's not great from a standpoint of reviewing visibility or auditability. You have to kind of announce what's going to happen here. This isn't going to be something that's just automatically going to end up as a GitHub pull request and socialize what that is to your team. So how do we actually make that a little bit better? First of all, plan your actions in a non-production environment. And this is actually a great time to plan your action with a peer, particularly one who is not a production key holder. So if you're bottlenecked, make sure that your team understands what it is that you're doing and plan that work out with them so they get the experience of seeing it happen. You then want to inform your broader team of what your intentions are. And this breaks down to what you're doing, how it's happening, or how it's going to happen, why it's happening. Why are we making this data correction, or why are we making a manipulation to a bunch of business records? And then you want to say when it's going to happen. So ideally, it's not just like, oh, hey, now. but you actually say, hey, at 2 o'clock, I'm going to carry out this action here. Along with working with a peer, I think working from a script is a great approach. And when your task complete, get out. Don't let your cat have prod access. So let's get into initial automation and notification. Cron jobs, am I right? So automate what you can, make it visible. So we started off and we had some big automated tasks here. And sometimes they wouldn't complete or require changes. And they're time sensitive. And so overall, like we take, kind of cascade through things. And we made some of it visible, but not all of it. But we wind up with a problem. We have an alerts room, and it is chock full of notifications. Zooming in, just like a lot of notifications for what's going on. So we have the benefit that we're increasing the visibility of our system. We are socializing, so you want to socialize where these are happening. You want to socialize the purpose of the notification, so you can have like the broader business like understand that things are happening. It's easy to do chat notifications. The barrier to just basically get these into Slack is pretty low, or whatever mechanism, if you're using Teams or whatever else. And we use this for both background jobs and live events that we pipe in. As an example of live events, anytime we get a hit from our fraud service that we don't want to allow a particular user to go through, we actually like get an alert. And that prompts us to actually like lock the account and stuff like that. That just gives us a little bit of a closer look at that. So, problems with notifications here. Dumping everything into one or more Slack channels can get very, very noisy. Secondly, the map is not the territory here. And so what I mean by this is you have to have the right things notifying, and you have to understand what not to notify about. And you have to make sure that your team understands which is which and what parts of the system you don't have notifying at all. So you don't want to jump to an assumption about the state of the system unless you know what's being reported in and what isn't. So you could do more, but fixing that up requires some more complex interactions. So you could get into chatbots, you could work with webhooks from those sort of things. Eileen in the previous talk showed off Hubot from GitHub, or there could be other custom solutions that you can code up. So automation, we've done pretty well with this. So you discover you're solving the same sort of problems over time, and you can make them rake tasks. And when's a good time to do this? As soon as you actually start detecting the pattern. The goal here is, so you still have the problem of production bandwidth constraints on a limited number of people, but you're getting the knowledge out of people's heads and into your code base. And so you can still broaden your team's understanding about this. And for us, like we actually can quickly re-invoke our catalog or our inventory ingestion process with a simple rake command. So I just have to hop on a production server and run a command like this, and we can get that kicked off if it fails. So we now land at a point where we can start reevaluating things. We've talked about the Rails console, we've talked about improving some automation, and we've talked about notifications. You've made some improvements, but we still haven't really solved the bottlenecking issue. So where can we go from here? We can talk about administrative frameworks here. And these are things like, let me zoom in here, active admin, there's Rails admin, there's administrate. Active admin looks like this on their main site, and for orders, you'll kind of end up with a screen like this. Zooming in a little bit, you'll see the order number, you'll see the date, you'll see a customer and a total and that sort of thing. Administrate kind of gives you the same sort of view, sort of thing. So it's a great way to get a broader data view of what's going on with your application. So you're increasing the visibility of the data inside the app. And for myself as a production key holder, this would actually solve a good swath of problem, because suddenly I'm not the only person who can actually look at that data. So we can uncouple the answering of the questions of production data from systems level access, which I think is a good approach. And there's not a whole lot of work to dropping one of these in. I mean, it's, you add it in, you make sure it routes, make sure you're protecting it, and there you go. And they allow for some amount of customization. So caveats here. You need to make sure that you work this into, as mentioned, your authentication and authorization schemes, because you are actually providing a live view to your production data. You don't want to leave that unprotected. You don't want to leave it for just anybody in your app to be able to get into. And they can be a sizable addition to your app. And finally, they won't cover everything that you need, particularly in specialized use cases. So we then kind of bridge over to building your own admin interfaces. Why would you want to build your own? You're not limited by the structure of an admin framework. And I like to think about this as a way of representing more complex states of things, and so how things drop out of workflows versus just how data would be represented in the database. And caveats here are, you're essentially doing full feature work at this point. So it has all the accompanying expense on, going through a full feature development cycle, testing, getting interface work done, QA, that sort of thing, getting approval from your stakeholders on this. The stakeholders in this case are both the rest of your technical team and your business stakeholders, making sure that they are actually set up for success with this as well. So what kind of things might we go to a customized interface for this for? So in our case, we presently have an interface for currency conversion. And what we use currency conversion for is we get a lot of our products priced in US dollars. We sell things in several other countries through their own kind of regional storefronts. And we don't necessarily get our publishing partners to provide us native or in-country pricing for those other countries. So what we do is, on a daily basis, we actually get conversion rates from US dollars into these other currencies. And then we can actually apply those against the available inventory for those stores to say, okay, based on the US dollar and this conversion rate, we should price this product at this amount for this other store. So this is just kind of a zoomed in view on that. You'll see on that top line there, a currency conversion from the US dollar to the US dollar. It converts at 1.0. Conversion to the pound is at 0.77, and so on and so forth. And we just add new entries for this, for the currency, or on a daily basis for the currencies that we're converting to. There's more that I want to see us do too, and this is hypothetical stuff that I've thought about in the last few days and weeks. I showed you an example before where we were getting a lot of notifications about fraud and fraud prevention into a chat room. I would love to get this into an app instead, and instead of dumping everything into Slack for manual action out of band, what I would instead like to do is provide summaries in Slack, but have an actual dashboard, something that's actionable in the app itself, that we could say, we had this email, and we have a user account that's tied to that gets a GUID. We get a score back from our fraud provider that basically says, here's whether or not we think this person, or how risky we think this person is, and then we use that to kind of threshold whether or not we're going to allow a purchase. How many purchase attempts they're making, because that helps us evaluate how we want to proceed. And then we basically give ourselves some opportunity to say, yeah, either let this person in, or let's go ahead and block them. We can do something similar with purchase troubleshooting. Thankfully, most transactions go through smoothly. And so it's very easy to just say, hey, okay, this is fine. But one of the things that we get is users will put in an address that the bank doesn't think is their address, and we get what's called an address verification failure. You can also get failures from just your card is declined for various reasons. And we can get all this information right now through our payment processor, but it would be nice to actually pull this information back. We actually get this information back. We store it in the database, but we don't actually present it. And so when we have a user calling with a problem, somebody has to go look up why, instead of actually just saying, hey, customer support, here's like the latest running thing of issues that have come up. You might hear from these folks. One of the things that comes up too sometimes is on that second line there. We call out to a different service that basically generates the entitlement for somebody to have a license for a book. If that fails, we want to be able to just say, hey, go retry that attempt again, generate that, and then activate the book for the user, instead of having to have them contact support. We can do that proactively. And finally, we do run into the trouble of folks potentially buying the same thing twice in a short amount of time. Either they ran into the first problem where code wasn't generated, or they genuinely forgot that they bought something and they bought it again. And when you're buying college textbooks, if they're $50 or $100 or whatever, that's definitely money that you want back quickly as a student. So if we can actually say, oh, that's probably a dupe, you might hear from the user about that, we can actually proactively cancel that transaction. And one of the other things that I think would be very helpful for us to do too is actually start thinking about our automated jobs as a stream of events and then kind of get a summary for these. So this is a sampling of the sort of things that we do. So we have our inventory ingestion, that's that first line with a catalog delta. And if we just saw when the last time that ran and was successful, we could get a status of it, and we could just say, hey, okay. And then if we had our store feed fail, we'd get a heads up about that. And if it failed twice, we could escalate it. We could actually fire a notification and say, hey, this needs some further attention. And then we would see a stream of events of, hey, here are the actual events that have all happened. Here's how they resolve themselves. And so it'd be very easy to for anybody on the team to just see a sense of how things were working rather than having to go dig. And so what I want this to be is, I talked before about our point dev filling out this spreadsheet. That's currently about 15 to 45 minutes a day for somebody, and that's better than it has been. We have a good sense of what's going on in production. But we could drop that to 5 minutes, and we can make this easily accessible for anybody on the team to go look at. So that's a lot of tools. And tools are not the be-all, end-all here. The main thing is you want to work with your team and make sure that you're understanding what problems different members of your team, different constituencies of your team see and face, and questions that they have. Questions that they may have in the back of their head, but they don't ask because they don't think that there's bandwidth to answer them. So let's come back to these central questions and look at them again. So when is a good moment for a team to start making their internal life better? I think now is a fine answer for that. Now, obviously, how much you can do at any given time, obviously is dependent on your circumstances. But start advocating for getting this time to start making your internal life better. What might that look like? Again, it could be standardizing on cron jobs for things that are manual tasks now. It could be building or just getting an admin interface in place and providing access to data for your technical stakeholders and ideally your business stakeholders as well, without requiring them to have production systems access. And who should advocate for it, and who should do it? I think everybody in the team technical stakeholder or technical practitioners, business stakeholders, all together should be advocating for this. I think you get a lot of value when you can start delivering more information to your business stakeholders without having to send them away from your app to things that aren't actually part of your system, but you're sending data out to. So like our business folks spend a lot of time in Google Analytics, and they kind of have to kind of piece things together in there. What I want to do is I want to give them better tooling to actually answer a lot of questions that they have about how purchasing is going, how sales are going inside the app itself. There'll still be a purpose for the analytics that they're using, but there are some core business questions that we can answer, and we have the answers to, we just need to kind of surface them. So some additional questions here. What is the time commitment? How often should we review? And who should be involved? So your time commitment, it could be everybody does 20%. It could be you take a week out of every month or a quarter, or you dedicate a point developer, if they're not spending time answering questions, they're spending time improving this internal tooling. There are a lot of different ways to approach this problem. I think you should review your approach to this, if not every retrospective, at least every other retrospective, or particularly when you actually cycle over, having somebody actually looking at this internal tooling. So if you have a point dev, like we use a 2-week iteration right now, I think 2 weeks is a good time for the person who's leaving point dev and the person who's coming into point dev to kind of like touch base and at least have a 2-person retrospective about, hey, here's what I tried, here's what I think would be good to work on next. So I think we can turn all these rain clouds into rainbows myself. And so really think critically about how, what feels like it's excessive friction, where you feel like the business folks are asking questions of you, you have to turn to a production key holder, or you are that production key holder who has to go answer them. What would have to be true for them to not have to interrupt you? What kind of problems do you want to focus and have those production key holders worried about more rather than solving everything? So I have some kind of related resources around all of this. So as part of the talk preparation for this, I reread the Phoenix Project for the first time in about 5 years. I think it's really good. It's a fictional business novelization. It's kind of a rewrite of The Goal, which came out, I think, late 80s, early 90s. That's also a good one. Work Clean. This book came out late last year or early this year and helped me really think about my role as a senior developer, focusing on quality control and mentorship, and kind of developing a personal framework for optimizing my organization and my productivity, and kind of like really shifted my thinking in terms of unsticking myself in terms of helping my team. The Nature Fix. This reminded me of the importance of getting up from my desk regularly and getting out in the woods, just like getting outside and not staying so focused on solving problems all the time, but actually like getting some perspective on things. And finally, the Greater Than Code podcast. They consistently offer incisive topics and interviews, and they have a great lineup of empathetic panelists and guests. And so a word of appreciation for all the hard work they've been doing over the run of that podcast. These Watkins graphics are by Stephanie Schaefer, the Vital Source Technologies designer. I'm at RailsConf.us. I write there very infrequently, but I'll have stuff up there later today or tomorrow at RailsConf.us/presentations. I'm also on Twitter. That's been my talk. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of your conference. Y'all have been a great audience, and y'all chose this session out of all the others, so I'm honored. Thank you very much.